We do have attorney at law.
Hello, good night.
Good night, Mr. Taklalsingh. How are you?
I am good.
Always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for taking time out for joining us. I want to get right down into the meat of it. Of course, the Privy Council ruling. The opposition leader made it quite clear that democracy and the rule of law have triumphed. And I just want to read part of Lord Richards, who was one of the law lords that weighed in on this, saying that the essential characteristic of a representative democracy, whether at a national or local level, is that the representatives are chosen by popular vote. In a modern democracy, such as Trinidad and Tobago, all individuals have the right to participate in the popular vote, subject only to specified conditions and disqualifications. Let me ask you, in your capacity as an attorney, how much did our democracy really needed this ruling?
Well, I think that it is an important judgment for our democracy and for the rule of law. First of all, Lord Richards really espoused on what are considered to be fundamental constitutional principles in our country. So in our constitution, under section 1, we declare ourselves to be a sovereign democratic state. And as a sovereign democratic state that believes in sovereignty, sovereignty means that power resides with the people. And power resides with the people because we are able to elect and choose our representatives both at the national parliament and the local government level. And that is really what Lord Richards was talking about. So when he reiterated the fundamental tenet of democracy, he was really inserting into a very important reminder into our jurisprudence to let all laws be interpreted in light of those fundamental democratic principles. And therefore I see that it was very important to both our democracy and the rule of law in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, and that interpretation, of course, is very important, especially for the layman, who may not be, of course, academically or legally inclined. When you hear words like deprive, which means taken away from, debarred, what does that say when you have an attorney general who is saying, listen, we were not given instructions to have a local government elections. What was said was, however, we may have trampled on your civil rights, taken away some of your civil liberties, but that does not justify us calling an election. How do you explain that to the average citizen?
Well, it's almost impossible to explain nonsense to the average citizen, so I am not going to try. The Attorney General is clearly misguided and he's wrong. He doesn't understand, clearly he doesn't understand, or he refuses to acknowledge what the Privy Council has told him. The Privy Council has essentially told him, listen, regardless of what statute you pass, or what law or what legislative objective you're trying to achieve, always remember that in a democratic state, in a sovereign democratic state, the people have the power to choose their elected representatives. And if you want to interfere with that, you have to come with very cogent and strong reasons, and you have to come with very clear legislation. You can't do that through the back door. You can't do that through vague language. You can't do that through unclear language. You have to do that with very clear language in the statute so that you come to Parliament and face the political consequences of your bill or your proposed legislative measure. There's another fundamental principle at play here. It's called parliamentary scrutiny and the principle of legality. And let me explain to your listeners what that means. Parliamentary scrutiny is an important foundational principle of democracy as well. What that says is that any bill or law that a government wishes to bring, it must face the scrutiny of Parliament, who is made up of elected representatives of the people. That is what parliamentary scrutiny means. And that is supported by another legal principle called the principle of legality. The principle of legality says that when you bring legislation which aims to wither away or to cut down fundamental rights, such as the right for you to vote for your elected representative, then you must use very clear language so you accept the political cost of what you are doing. So the people must know that you are coming to the Parliament to take away their right to vote so they can then teach you a lesson at the polls. You can't come with vague legislation, pass it through Parliament, and then one day rely on some obscure provision to extend the term of councillors. And that is essentially what this judgment was about. The Privy Council tell them, no, hold on, this legislation that you all passed, it doesn't say what you mean it to say, and it's not clear enough. And we will apply the principle of legality and say that if you want to do that, it must come with very clear statute or clear words in the statute.
Now, how much of a disarray has this issue placed our local government body in?
Well, there are different things, and different people have opinions on it. In the Municipal Corporations Act, there is a clear provision, in my view, which says that councillors are indemnified for any actions that they do while in office, even if their tenure is not properly held. So I think that covers our councillors. I don't think they have to worry. There is also the principle of necessity, which says that, look, if things have to be done, if there are questions about your office, but you are in the office at the time and there are emergency situations, well, then you can do it as well. There is also clear law which says that just because an instrument or office holder is struck down, it does not mean that every act performed while in office or under that instrument is automatically legal, because that could create havoc in the legal system, and the law recognizes that. So in terms of prior to this judgment, I have no difficulty. I don't think anything that was done, etc., will necessarily be overturned. That's just my opinion, and I think that is supported by solid principles of law. Going forward is another issue, because now you have become aware that there is an illegality, and that is why it is important that either A, the government bring very clear legislation to say that it intends to extend the term of office for a short period of time, or B, that you call an election immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it for all that it is, and again, the average citizen who may not be legally inclined is saying, listen, when you have a government, you expect them to have the best of minds are there. They function with the best of advice, the best interpretation of the law, where we don't have to be going back and forth with these issues. And citizens are looking on and saying, listen, everything seems to be playing out in the court. And when it plays out in the court, it doesn't seem to favor the government. What kind of confidence then is expected of the citizenry if the government itself doesn't seem to have its things in order?
Well, the problem is this government and its attorney generals have a track record of incompetence, have a track record of misleading people, making misrepresentations, not acting in the best interest of the people in everything that they do, including, the recent appointment of Silk, the Miami issue, the many issues, which I'm sure all of your listeners would remember.
And I understand that, and it's quite clear. But taking it from the perspective of the layman again, he or she does not expect that the government has to continue going to court, having these cases, when in fact it doesn't come out in their favor. And looking on is saying, what's happening here? I mean, because it becomes scary when you start to hear things like dismantling service commissions, when you start to hear about this political hand of interference that is not supposed to be existing in these independent agencies, it turns into a serious social, political horror story. What are we to take away from this?
Well, what to take away from that is that if you had office holders and senior cabinet positions and people who hold the reins of power acting in the genuine interest of people, you would not have these things happening. We expect legal challenges regardless of when UNC was in power. There are legal challenges. You're not always going to get it right. But the point is, if people bring bona fide legal challenges, you should accept them, or you should do what you can do to avoid having legal challenges. But you see, when a government is bent on being a totalitarian power, and by that, of course, what I mean is a government bent on controlling every aspect of society, to put itself in the grip of its Gestapo-like tendencies, then you are going to run into problems. And that is the problem with this government. They want to control everything. They don't want resistance. They don't want free speech. They don't want freedom of thought, expression, opinion. They don't want opposition. They simply want to run roughshod over people's rights, over people's liberties, over people's constitutional freedoms. And when you have a government that is focused on that, you're always going to end up in court. And thank God we have the Privy Council. No disrespect, of course, to our local courts. But thank God we have the Privy Council that is detached from our society, that can look down and to look at us and tell the government, listen, you can't accuse us of political bias because we have nothing, we have no horse in this race, and we are telling you you're wrong. So thank God we have that independent institution. Of course, luckily we have a strong opposition as well.
Yeah, and of course it always reaches down to one thing, and I'm sure that the citizens would agree with me. How much is this going to cost taxpayers? And is anyone at all going to be held accountable or can be held accountable?
Well, that is yet to play out. I don't want to prematurely assess what is going to take place. There would have been a claim for damages of constitutional rights. It would be a legal cost issue, and then they would have costs that you would have had to pay the lawyers appearing on behalf of the state in the matter. So if there is a cost to the taxpayer, of course, at a time when we want our roads paved, our garbage taken out efficiently, our bridges built, all of the needs of ordinary people, we have to sit back and watch millions of dollars being wasted, really to play to the egos and the totalitarian tendencies of this government. And that is a real problem. It is a governance problem in our country, which leads to all of these issues.
Yeah, and of course, the local government elections is one thing, but having to deal with this even after the dust has settled, it's very, very shaky, very unstable, because again, so many things are being compromised that are supposed to be independent. And we, the taxpayers, we, the citizens, are definitely not getting the best out of it. So where do we go from here? And as you said, you don't want to preempt anything, but this judgment in itself says a lot, especially where our civil liberties are concerned. Closing comments? Go right ahead.
I want people to understand the judgment is a victory for the rule of law. Insofar as every judgment that is upheld and teaches us something is a victory for the rule of law. It re-emphasizes very basic democratic principles and notions, which we all know. We instinctively know that we have to vote for our leaders. We didn't need a court to tell us that, but apparently the government needed reminding. And now you have a position where they have told the government, look, you need to pass very clear legislation if you want to do what you want to do. But in any event, keep in the back of your mind that sovereignty and a sovereign democratic state means that power resides with the people, and that is something, that is a lesson that we can all take away. Power resides with the people, and ultimately, if we don't like what is happening, we have the power to change it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taklalsingh. I know you're outside of the Monday Night Report, UNC Monday Night Report. You came outside to talk to us.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and again, keep up the good work. All the best to you and your team.
Take care. Good night.
Thank you so much.